Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Broke Rias' Marriage for His Selfish Benefit and Money movie. Before we start, please go support Issei in 1993 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Legend has it that there is no being more selfish than the human being, just as there is no being better than this one and superior to this one. There is no love that limits it nor hatred great enough to stop it. He is there, and so it will be. Chapter 1. Tell me something, Sirzurch. What did you expect by coming to my house and establishing a good relationship with my mother while I was gone? Did you expect me to welcome you with open arms? Sirzurch Lucifer, one of the four great Satans of the underworld, was nervous about the situation he found himself in. The boy in front of him was like all other humans. Weak. His physical strength barely exceeds average, and his intelligence is more based on the logic of things, although this is still a questionable debate. What made him so nervous was the aura that he unconsciously released. This human had no magic, no sacred artifacts, and was not affiliated with anyone of influence, but his presence still made him a threat. I'm here for you, Hyade-san. The brown-haired boy looked at him with hawk eyes, not believing him a bit. You mean my brothers? I have nothing of interest that I can help you with. The gulp came out. He felt the hostility in her tone, so he thought carefully about what he would say. I need your help. I'll pay you. The brown-haired boy didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the woman who was his mother sleeping like a baby, without flinching. I felt nothing but indifference for this woman, who, besides giving her life to him, has rarely shown any interest beyond anger and shame for him. I will listen to you. Don't expect any results from me, and I hope you give me compensation corresponding to the waste of time you are causing. The demon sighed. Something he didn't even know he was holding back. I want that. Well, it's about my sister. Her engagement party is coming up soon, and because of that, you want me to interrupt? Seriously, you devils aren't that different from us, so why would I have the time to take care of Rias's business? I remind you that my relationship with her isn't exactly good. Sirzurch sighed. If it weren't for his sister, this guy would probably be his brother-in-law now, something that bothered him in a certain way. I was hoping you'd do a number in this theater, to be honest. Anything works. I guess my brothers are useless at this. What the hell are the Red Emperor Dragon doing, and who controls the water as if it were an extension of itself? The demon felt uncomfortable at these words. He knew the family's relationship and really wondered how big this boy's ego was that he didn't give a damn about other people's words. They are training, although their progress is not exactly good, so they're garbage, okay. I'm not surprised. How much time is left? I think we have about days or maybe less. Well, considering trash will always be trash and its owner is a woman who likes to collect broken things, I wouldn't be surprised if they became the laughingstock of the underworld in a few days. Tell me, how the hell do you expect them to make a breakthrough with such little time? If I had months, I could do something for the right price. No, wait. You said they're training? Sirzurch nodded in response. So they're not trash, they're waste. Tell me, what have you been doing all this time? Aren't the demonic aristocracy supposed to train their heirs from a young age so as not to embarrass them in public? I think I know the answer. Sirzurch felt his anger growing, but he couldn't refute anything or say anything that wouldn't put him in an even more embarrassing situation. Her sister had so much potential and had incredible nobility if only she had stopped to train them properly. But instead he got a bunch of pieces that were more of a display case collectible than anything more useful, like a favorite doll or toy. I have a plan, but don't expect it to turn out the way you thought it would. What are you doing? Sirzurch felt strange knowing that the brown-haired boy accepted without much resistance. Isn't the matter simple enough? I just need to exchange your marriage for another one, so we all get what we want. The chestnut looked at the demon in front of him. You didn't expect me to meet your expectations so easily, did you? Find someone else if that's the case, because you know very well that the old people on the council won't let her go so easily. And I know very well that they will not allow her to marry a human. Sirzurch saw the boy smile at his answer. They'll be looking for maximum profit. They won't care about anything else, so leave it to me and I'll solve your problem. Sirzurch loved his sister, but he also hated her equally. Her nature didn't allow her to tarnish her name, much less her family name, with stupid things like freedom when she couldn't obtain it on her own. She was so mean in those matters that it made him sick. It wasn't her business until she made it a family affair. Her sole duty was to give birth to a new demon and nothing else. After that she'd be free to do as she pleased. Even the commitment was clear in that, but she refuses so much that I request a rent-a-game out of pure selfishness. Nobody expected this, so it was a pain for everyone in the family. Nothing was ever asked of her, and she refused to give anything of her own. It was as if she didn't understand that everything she was thanks to family. Even after giving birth, the marriage would end immediately, leaving her free to roam freely. Okay, I'll trust you. After that he transferred a lot of money to the chestnut's bank account and left, leaving him alone once again. The brown-haired boy looked at his mother and smiled. With this I no longer owe you anything. A small glow, like a flash, appeared in a sort of laboratory. There were many incredible things in it. Each one belongs to a certain and select number of visited worlds. Each one is good, or better than imagined. God didn't abandon him. Coming into this world was a blessing, and although he had some problems, it was something he could easily handle. Rias's engagement to the third son of the Phoenix was something easy to solve. The Rias Gremory of this world is just as I imagined. An idiot. His entourage isn't that different, and the threats of this world were dealt with long ago. A dragon god about to be used for war. Ready, sending him to another world to conquer and be as free as he wants. A lowly with a terrorist organization at her mercy, solved. Give her some sweets and cuddles and you've got her. Certified by all those who are behind bars. And finally, a fallen angel thirsty for revenge. Well, he's still pretty vengeful, but he's under control. All the gods of this world are a joke. Show them what their encounters with the chaos gods of the 40,000th millennium would be like, and they will be so terrified that they will seek your protection. No one is a threat in this world. You could say it was an excellent vacation spot. Chapter 2. I investigated Lucifer's assignment to his sister in some detail. The engagement between the daughter of the Gremory against the third of the Phoenix was the hottest thing among the underworld gossip. Although everyone said what was expected of such a commitment, the truth is that most did not care in the least. Although the wedding date was already scheduled, an incident occurred. For some reason the date was brought forward, and now the time the redhead thought she had was abruptly shortened, and at this rate they could make a stupid mistake. As an extra bonus, if I didn't know Surzeka's personality, he sent me the date of the meeting between Rias and Rias. Come on! It's pretty obvious what he was looking for by giving me such information. It was so obvious that I decided to participate in this. What would it be? A short story? A novel? Just for the hell of it. It's not like it's anything out of this world. I've seen much more awkward situations with fewer people involved. For example, this guy, Kasuya, and his so-called ex-mom and his rented girlfriend. Once I left my room and was ready to leave, I saw my older sister. Because we are a family of, my father died years ago, leaving us when I was little. I am currently the youngest of and I am certainly the one who stands out the least of the other. While they were winning contests, I was playing video games, and while I was reading some manga, they were participating in some luxurious party. They practically have a secure life, but because of my mother's preference over them, they became unbearable people. It was easier to deal with a schizophrenic than with my sister's bad moods. Get out of the way. My sister was beautiful, devilishly beautiful, but her temperament was such that a viper would fall short of her. Trying to push me aside, I simply moved away, causing her to fall to the ground from the momentum. Oh, sister, be careful with your shoelaces. You won't fall. He smiled, and it was enough to make her anger explode. When he saw me, for reasons that don't need to be explained, my mother acted protectively towards her and believed everything she said, whereas I simply turned a deaf ear when she tried to reprimand me. On the way to school, I sent some emails to some acquaintances to ask some questions. Good morning. Parting face, grinning face with big eyes. A new message came out suddenly, and when I checked the number I realized who it was. Oh, I was wondering when you'd dare to contact me again. I watched as the letters of the conversation loaded and then the message arrived. Shut up, idiot. Mom asks if you're coming to dinner tonight. It was so typical of her to respond with insults before being direct with what she wanted. I don't know, maybe if a certain girl with yellow chicken hair asks me nicely I could consider it face with monocle. I sent some pretty subtle stickers about what I was feeling at that moment. I could imagine her screaming and blushing as she hurled insults at me from the other end of the line. Wait! Who are you calling a chicken, you damn being? Garbage, idiot, useless. Death, death to the heretic. I'll find you and feed you to the pigs. pouting face with symbols on mouth, skull and crossbones. With that the messages came from leaving. By this point I had already reached the academy. It was not a surprise to see the student council members checking the outfits of all the students. The surprising thing at the moment was to see the president and vice president doing such a job. Without wanting to start any possible conversation, I checked my outfit. It was ironed, clean, and in order. Nothing out of the ordinary, and I had some cigarettes in my trunk, nothing out of the ordinary. Like the rest of the students, I passed without any incidents, but I got a look from the president, but she didn't say anything to me or make any gesture. I could imagine that he realized what I brought with me, but he was basically an angel in the eyes of others. I wasn't a standout, nor was I that handsome. Hardly anyone knew I existed, and that's thanks to my brothers, who always shine with their mere presence. Sometimes I wonder if I'm participating in some kind of palace measuring contest every time they appear. I mean, is it really necessary to be so conspicuous? The first hour of class was scheduled but I didn't have, or rather, they had no intention of letting me participate. There was an envelope in my place, barely folded. In it was the formal invitation to appear at the research club, and I asked myself at that moment, seriously? They couldn't even make the invitation more formal. It's as if they wanted to indirectly say that it wasn't even worth the materials for such a letter. I decided it was better not to attend. If my attendance was so important, it was better that they come to me. With a little fire and some mind control, switch places with another guy across the room. A little preparation never hurts. By lunchtime some club members arrived. For obvious reasons I didn't even bother to look at them. I walked around them without paying attention to any of their signals. I wasn't a dog to be called by a whistle or strange movements. Excuse me, are you hired to Issei? Until someone seems to notice the indifference. Who is looking for? Excuse me? I'm Yudokiba, a member of the occult cub. I wanted to know why you didn't show up at the appointed time. I made my best confused face. Sorry, but I don't know what game you're playing. I started walking towards the roof. The following days they tried to do everything possible to get me to meet with them. While they were now actively searching, I began to investigate their reasons. Apparently, both my brother and sister talked about me, but it wasn't anything really long since besides giving them the image that I'm a lazy criminal. I'm also very good at strategies, and due to Rias's commitment, they thought I would be an excellent addition to their team. I might have considered it if I hadn't heard that if I refused to sign a contract with them, they would kill me and turn me into a pawn to make me obey them. A life of slavery in that case. It wouldn't be a possibility with Rias's personality, but under the influence of my brothers and the bad image she has of me, it's not so safe now. As the meeting date approached, the attempts by that group became more extreme. They were no longer casual encounters or coincidences. Now they were more direct. They were waiting outside my house, they were waiting for me at lunchtime, and it even seemed like they tried to sneak into my room. But don't expect them to get so bold. I got stung and something strange invaded my body. Attempts to charm, bewitch or distract me were not enough, so they turned to drugs. My body quickly adapted and eliminated the external agent, but I didn't defend myself against the kidnapping attempt. Instead, I chose to take the most defenseless form possible to deceive them. If I recall correctly, today was possibly the day they would meet to discuss the terms and conditions of the renting game that will take place. It is very possible that an embarrassing situation will occur for Rias that would make my brothers have a bad time. Chapter 3. To Riser, his life was nothing but resignation and lack of emotions. Make no mistake. He lives well, eats the best food, has entertainment rooms, and spends most of his time with his harem. The life of someone who is satisfied with what he has, and therein lies the problem. Unlike his older brothers, he doesn't crave the power, the recognition, the greed that characterizes someone of his race. His will is in the freedom of a bird to be free at will. He likes to do and enjoy the pleasures of the flesh. With a lifespan of approximately 1,000 years, he had enough time to live all kinds of experiences. When he reached the minimum age to have his own servants, the first thing he did was look for women. After years of searching, he found the right woman for the role he wanted her to play. A group of girls who would be with him of their own free will, thus creating a tailor-made harem. Each member had their own quirks and personalities, but they loved each other for who they were. Something very difficult to obtain, even from your own family, but that never really mattered. As the third child in the family, not much was expected of him. To uphold the family name, and not bring shame upon his family. Something he was able to do perfectly by organizing parties, business meetings, and gaining some reputation in society's main entertainment medium. A ranking game. But not everything was rosy. One day, his sister, clearly uncomfortable, informed him of her engagement. He had to marry the heiress of the Gremory family. He already understood his father's subtle message in this, and his mother's clear indifference. He, even with his dream of living an idle life, had to fulfill certain responsibilities that tied him to his family. The last war of their race left them in the red. Half of the pillars of the underworld perished in the conflict. The survivors were mostly those lucky enough not to die in the ensuing civil war. Of the three parts of the biblical faction, they, the devils, were the ones who had the upper hand in terms of numbers. Even when he invented the evil pieces to reincarnate potential candidates to increase his people's numbers, it wasn't enough. It was an easy and flawed method, and by the end of a few millennia, there would be no pure-blooded demons left. This is the main reason why their commitment was made. To prevent the extinction of the bloodlines. For the members of the High Demonic Council, who are mostly followers of the old demonic ways, they advocate a mixture between families instead of allowing them to mix with foreign blood. It was the responsibility of the new generations to breed future demons, stronger, more powerful. But even with that explanation, he believed the matter would have nothing to do with him. He had already planned to marry his queen. That woman drove him crazy. He still remembered the day he met his fiancée. It was a real disaster. He tried to reveal the worst in himself after a drunken night on dragon liquor. He hoped it would be enough to break the engagement, but it didn't go as expected. His queen wasn't in a position to play her role, and how could she not be? She was literally being forced to be a bed warmer while she watched him strip another girl. Even after that, he did everything possible to avoid marriage. I used every trick in the book to get families to break off the engagement and prioritize the dignity of the family name. But even ruining his name was not enough, and he gave up on continuing with the method. He abandoned that way of being when he realized that he could do nothing to avoid it. He resigned himself to his fate and began to try to soften the blows of the future to come. With a little couples therapy and some manual skills, he was able to repair the relationship he had with his queen and, consequently, his harem. He hoped to reach some kind of agreement with his fiancée, but each attempt was unsuccessful, and he gave up. It turned out that she was, in some ways, worse than him. If he was a man with a bohemian life, she was a slob. Even by the standards of her generation, Rias Gremory was the very image of a doomed devil. The difference in strength, reputation, and connections was vast, and she still has the arrogance of a year-old and the temper of a when she doesn't get what she wants. He hoped this last meeting would change her mind. Both he and she didn't want this marriage, but now that he knew the terms of the contract would be limited to producing a new member of his species, he could finally move on with his life, even if it meant he was a single father. Free to marry the woman he loves. Change of scene. Are you ready? Both Rias and the current queen of Lucifer were waiting in the main hall of the family castle. That's right, Rias-sama. At your command, we'll be transported to your location on Earth. His queen, Yubilana, smiled. Brother, don't let them trample on you. You may be Lucifer's sister, but you shouldn't show inferiority. You're a phoenix, and as such, keep your pride high. Rias nodded in response. Yes. I'll speak in the third person if that makes you feel better. Idiot. Once everything was in order, it was time to leave. He would be accompanied by Grafia, wife and queen of Lucifer and sister-in-law of his fiancée, as a sign of interest and to grant a position as an intermediary in case he is required. The spell was activated and was sent directly to its destination, but upon arriving he immediately noticed the strange situation he was involved in. In front of him was the nobility of Rias Gremory, and in the middle of a magic circle a boy who seemed to be dying while he was gagged. If you understand the situation, Lucifer's queen moved immediately, and surprisingly for him, she rescued the boy and then released some pressure on themselves. He barely hunched before activating his family's flames, repelling the queen's intention. Seeing the noblewoman of Rias subdued, he thought of asking, "Is your refusal really such that you are willing to ruin the life of a third party?" There were many answers for the situation, but seeing the boy's face of relief and the looks of resignation of the others make it quite clear what could have happened. Chapter 4. Tense. That's what everyone felt, of course. The only one who wasn't tense was the human boy, who had a grumpy look on his face as he ate candy under the watchful, death-defying gaze of his owner. So Riser must rebound, which is exactly what you thought you would do a moment ago, and I remind you that you have your brother's wife here as a referee, so don't try to lie. The situation Rias found herself in was pretty bad, but even so, her thoughts were directed at the inopportune moment when her fiancé appeared. She was even considering the possibility that this was some kind of plot to prevent her from having all the cards she needed to use. Miss Gremory, her sister-in-law's voice was full of authority, and without further ado she began to tell her version of events. It should be noted that Rias is not very good at lying, although everything she said gave some credit to the boy's intelligence. Seeing the accused sitting with nothing but annoyance and anger in his expression left the redhead's credibility in doubt, even if his words were being backed by the nobility of this same. For Riser, this is another awkward moment with Rias, whose attitude and confidence in her words made him feel embarrassed. Feeling sorry for others, Grafia felt disappointed. Not because of Rias's attitude in the face of the obvious lack of tact, but because, even though she knew she had done wrong, she was trying to justify herself. The maid looked at the human for a moment. She had never had such close contact. Although he did not exude any kind of power or seem strong, she knew that his connections could cause problems for the underworld if he so desired. He was practically the only mortal who could drive the demons to extinction. Lucifer had orders to avoid any kind of stupidity that would lead to their annihilation. However, Rias, his wonderful sister-in-law, was in a situation that, yes, was required. She had to be killed on the spot if it prevented any conflict with the human present. That's how I decided to reincarnate him. Rias had a winning expression. If it weren't for the atmosphere and the snowflakes slowly spreading through the room. Rias, the only thing stopping me from giving you a good scolding is that we are in a compromising situation. Riser didn't really care about seeing a woman being punished. But he did have a conscience. Rias, I, Riser, wish you the best. With that, he left as quickly as possible, completely forgetting the purpose of his visit. Instead, Rias already felt that something was not right when she saw her sister-in-law's furious look. At this moment, she was between the kind woman and a ruthless secretary. Change of scene. Rias had a slap in the face. Her peerage was out, and the human was quietly reading an anime magazine. Although the situation was strange, the tension from a moment ago was not present. Instead, there was the indignation of a maid and the regret of a redhead. Of course, it wasn't difficult to reach a consensus. Once Grafia had made the necessary introductions, Rias no longer felt so gracious. Instead, she was somewhat terrified when she learned that this human had a certain friendship with the 4 demon kings. But he didn't tell me anything. Rias looked like a little girl trying to make excuses. And it is not my duty to explain anything to you. The chestnut didn't feel offended or anything. He was never in danger and took this as a good way to make a hostile first contact where the aggrieved party was the. Of course, though I don't expect this girl's stupidity to lead him to almost reincarnating him out of mere speculation. However, you leave much to be desired, you Rias. With the little time I have known you, I already dislike you, and your nobility too. I apologize to you. I will accept full responsibility. Grafia sighed. She wanted to leave already. Rias, this young man here is hired to Issei. He's currently our monitor in the human world and enjoys the protection of the 4 Satans. Because of your actions, now, Grafia, stop. Leave this in my hands. Issei interrupted the maid's words and then turned to Rias. Due to certain agreements, I must emphasize that your actions are very emphatic. You have zero control over your nobility, and easily fall into third-party games. Issei sighed. Feeling that his daughter was going to have a big waste of time. Your brother contacted me last night for a job. Due to the nature of your situation, I was entrusted with the job of training you. Rias nodded enthusiastically, understanding. She hoped the boy she almost recruited was some kind of coach or teacher who would help her reach new heights. But seeing you just makes me feel down. Rias, you're such a waste. At that moment a strong magical pressure exploded. Chapter 5. I know I was wrong to let myself be carried away by his words, but that guy is insufferable. Sona Citri, a close friend of Rias Gremory who was currently listening to her complaints. It was mid-afternoon when Sona arrived at the Occult Club lounge to learn about Rias's latest developments and her situation on the date of the early marriage. But when he arrived at the old building where the club was located, he found the unfriendly faces of the Hayato brothers. She didn't have time to say a word to find out the reason behind this when she noticed the loud bang of a teacup falling and shattering. Although he was several meters away from where it happened, he only managed to hear it thanks to the devil's abilities that were focused on him. Although the Hayato brothers were good pieces and had potential, the temperament of both left much to be desired, and he preferred to give away the opportunity in order to recruit them. Once I arrived at the occult hall, I saw a pretty normal Akino. She didn't have that strange smile on her face, nor did she seem to exude that ladylike aura. Knight Kiba made his non-existent presence shine, surely somewhere training as was part of his routine. The only strange thing about all this that caught my attention was Rias, who had a face of absolute annoyance. Although I already knew that expression since it is the one he uses when he does not get what he wants, he was one of those who appeared on rare occasions. Sona sighed in resignation, waiting not only for an explanation to alleviate Rias's discomfort, but also to find out what caused such a development, and perhaps add some salt to the matter. And that brought her to the present. The repressed anger of her friend of dubious intelligence was only repressed in the first place because both she and herself knew it to be true. Issei Hayata's words as told by Rias were so raw and real that it hurt. Sona knew her friend's temperament well. She was one of those who would come up with a good idea, and from a third party's point of view it would seem like it was good, but in the long run it didn't seem so good. A clear example is his peculiar way of finding new members for his nobility. His queen was powerful. Although he didn't know her background very well, he knew that she was hiding something behind that smile. In addition to that tendency towards sadomasochism, a normal person wouldn't have that tendency, because if the little Kokino was a Makomata that looks more like a Kusuna if it weren't for the collaboration of the cat behind her. The strange thing is that besides being very withdrawn with almost no friends if there were any, she didn't practice senjutsu. The boy/girl in the next room is a matter that prefers not to interfere, and that includes Kiba with his obsession with training, and she said that she preferred work before fun. Another thing I couldn't deny was Rias's affinity for work. She had such a lax training plan that it seemed more like practical exercises to stay in shape than something that would help them gain power. Their influence in human society was limited to a select number of people who knew them more by their last name than anything else. Even his daily routine was more about lazing around than doing anything else productive. The only reason they haven't had many problems during their lairs is that a stray demon rarely appeared in the city. Even those criminals who passed through the city only came for a few days at most. As the city, although it is part of the territory controlled by the devil, the truth is that it functions more as a neutral zone between the demons and the pantheons of Japan, with an annual payment as rent. And what else did this guy tell you? Rias looked at her angrily. Something I appreciated. It's just that you weren't listening to everything I was saying. He literally looked down on me. He saw me. He gave me a look of disdain. Rias sighed and asked for something to drink, which was a good moment, taking advantage of Akino to disappear. If it weren't for Grafia, I wouldn't have taught him a lesson. Rias still seemed angry about the situation. Sona of course saw it with grace, remembering how fragile her friend's ego is. Recognition? Strength? Power? Wealth? She had it all. It was all natural to her. As the heir to the demonic pillar of Gremory, she would have everything. So why was she angry? It was easy. She had the strange but understandable idea of being all that, but not because she was part of the Gremory family, but because she wanted to be a recognized person. Her name. She herself was known as the Unbeatable One because of the bet she had on her hand. It wasn't much, but it was better than the origin of the nickname, Crimson Ruin, a nickname born a few years ago because Rias almost annihilated the family property in an attempt to overcome the limits of her power without prior training. So, this was all just a tantrum. Why should they care about other people's opinions? They were demons, driven by the sins humans consider capital, indifferent to the plight of others. And while they weren't as evil as the members of the old Satan faction, we were more discreet about it, friendlier, so to speak. Rias, although she doesn't accept it, had the sin of pride and did very little to control what it entails. Unlike her, who is slightly more powerful than Rias due to her excellent control over her desires, she had more innate power from a demon than anything else. So what? You'll wait for a good moment to teach him a lesson. She was clearly being sarcastic, but it seems Rias didn't think the same if her expression of frustration changed so visibly. All I could do now was sigh in resignation. This will be a disaster. Chapter 6. For the brown-haired human, life wasn't always easy. There were moments that were definitely not to his liking, especially now that his presence was requested again by the demons, and he had to attend a meeting. For someone like him who prefers to send responsibilities and appearances to hell, such a meeting brought him a certain feeling of charm, so to speak. It also seemed like an excellent opportunity to get under the skin of his older brothers. Once I arrived at the occult room, I looked at the smiling vice president of the club. If I remembered correctly, her name was Himejima Aquino. I couldn't deny that her figure was devilishly hexy, with measurements quite disproportionate to the normal human standard, but that looked perfect on her. Although she was aware that she was looking too much and ogling everything she could, she didn't seem bothered by his blatant gaze that made no attempt to hide his lust. Go ahead, the president is waiting for you. Guided by her, he entered the old building, and while looking at her rear end indiscriminately, he quickly reached his destination, entered the living room, and there he saw them. The entire noble, including the boy with a box on his head, trembling with nerves. His brothers ignored him, and the blonde boy had a sickly smile. The only one that seemed to be normal was the one who invited him, with a flat look. Even the white-haired lowly girl ignored him as she ate candy and played what appeared to be Candy Crush on her phone. Thank you for coming. Please take a seat. This was already progress. If it weren't for our previous incident, I swear anyone would feel honored to have a meeting with the most beautiful girl in the academy. First, I apologize for what happened last time. Back then, I didn't think much about the long-term consequences of my actions. She bowed slightly, and to my surprise the others did too, including my brothers, who bowed in response and with apparent feigned annoyance. As long as you acknowledge your mistake, I'm fine with it. However, I must clarify that I'm not particularly happy with the fact that you almost forced me to wage war on your race. My statement made everyone seem surprised, a bit of an exaggerated reaction in my opinion. Don't be confused, Rias Gremory. I may be a human to you, but even your family knows that messing with me is a big no-no in their records. Clearly my physique is not that of a warrior, nor did I have any visible magical signature to confirm the level of power. Except my specialty doesn't use the standard magic system of this world to begin with. What do you mean? Just by looking at you I know you're so weak that a beating is enough to send you to the hospital. A small laugh came from my sister afterwards. I couldn't. Your body is weaker than instant noodles. Stop bragging and know your place. My brothers made those comments, and all they provoked was my pity. And I let them know with my eyes, and apparently it worked, since both of them erased their arrogance from their faces in favor of one of more visible annoyance contorting their faces. What do you know about me? The last time we saw each other, you were crying on the floor because your date abandoned you. The look my older brother now sent me was one of suppressed fury. And your dear sister seemed to be looking for something on the ground. She clicked her tongue. A fake toss interrupted me, and it came from the rivers. Let's not stray from what's urgent. Issei Hayadokuen. What was that about you bringing war to my race? Are you perhaps threatening us? I looked at Rias with disappointment. Today it seemed like I was surrounded by idiots. And even though my brothers are idiots, Rias seemed to be a champion at the matter. The last time we saw each other, which was 2 days ago, I explained to you clearly and concisely that you're an idiot, and it seems I have to claim that again. Rias, you're an idiot. I could see the anger rising in her as well as in the others, but she took a deep breath to calm it. You clearly heard what I said, but if your reaction is to get upset and then attack, it means calling you a piece of trash is an understatement. I should be calling you useless trash. I let out a small laugh. The anger is quite visible to everyone else now, and yes, it clearly wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. There's no need to explain why your brother sent me to you, but since our relationship was ruined before it even began, I don't see any reason not to tell you the truth. Now I changed my attention. She didn't seem so angry anymore, just annoyed and curious. Your brother contacted me for help. Something about breaking off your engagement to that flaming guy. Now it seems I forgot what I said before. Those changes in behavior compete with that of a wretched treasure hunter. But you decided it was a better idea to end my life and reincarnate me. Tell me. Why did you do it? Something I need to know that you haven't said before. I looked at my brothers. They were clearly quite annoyed, but they held back from making any cheeky comments, a good indication that Rias has a tight leash or they have a little respect for the redhead. I'd lean more toward the latter. I must emphasize that it was not my intention to take such drastic measures against you. At that time I had just learned of your existence, and your brother's. Okay. This is a little disconcerting. Wasn't she the one who sought them out first? That was usually the norm. Find a good candidate, vet them, and if they meet your requirements, then find a way to attract them to your side. They explained your relationship with them to me, and I understood that in addition to your character and personality to attract problems, you were also someone cynical and manipulative. I hope that with your high IQ and your lack of ability to use magic it would be easier for me to bring you to my side, but you didn't make things easy. I hoped to give you a proposal that I couldn't refuse, but each attempt to meet ended with nothing in my hands, and that frustrated me, so I decided to be more drastic and less direct. This wasn't expected. A little pity on my part would be too good for her if this was the explanation she was giving me, or if she expected a similar reaction in return. I thought you wouldn't mind if I reincarnated you straight into a demon, you know, longer lifespans, a little above average strength, riches and all that, with any ignorant person that could convince him. I'm not a fan of the longer, more monotonous life. Riches my balls, money wouldn't be difficult to get with my connections, and although I admit I'm not very strong, I can clearly take down his team without any problem. I could only sigh in response. Her explanation of why she tried to do what she did nothing to assuage my annoyance at her and her group. Are you serious when you said I'm a criminal? I have punk friends and a few gangsters, but they're all honest. They're judged without knowing them, typical. I'd eat if she were better. The only report at school about me is that the student council vice president gave me a strike when she found me smoking on the rooftop. It couldn't be avoided. Anxiety sometimes strikes, and I'm not a pervert. That offends me. The fact that I'm a big fan of female beauty isn't a crime. Let's put aside the fact that you tried to kill me. I want to know why you called me here. Leave your games to someone professional and say what you want. Although Rias seemed to have good intentions, and I clearly know she did, she doesn't have a very good time hiding her intentions. She could easily be an idiot, and I don't plan on treating her any better than that. I want your help. There it is. It was so hard to say it and give me an explanation as to why he did what he did. If he had asked honestly first, none of this would have happened. No, but you didn't say that my brother sent you to help me. That was before you thought it was a good idea to kill me in the first place. The guy at the register immediately collapsed. The conversation hadn't even gotten heated enough yet. We were just getting started. The little lowly picked up the transvestite guy and carried him out of the room. I only finished my deal with your brother yesterday. I wasn't planning on interfering with you if it weren't for the pay he offered me as a result. But apparently you have no scruples when it comes to acting, so I preferred to break the deal. I don't work if I don't feel like it. What do you want? Apparently he's not that stupid if I can understand what I meant. What could you possibly offer me? And don't offer me money. You can't even earn your daily bread if I entrust it to you. Rias looked offended. My family could pay. And weren't you supposed to want me to treat you like Rias and not the heiress of Gremory? Where's your trust if you use your family's wealth to make a deal? I could see the frustration on her face, but her gaze changed to a more flirtatious one. I can offer you something else if you want. Rias! My brother stood up angrily, and then looked at me. How can you say that? It seems there is a story to tell here. Sit down and be quiet. Rias glared at him, and in response my brother gave up his outburst. So? What do you think of the proposal? It was quite tempting. Unfortunately for you, I'm not attracted to you enough to change my mind. You're dreaming if you expect me to agree with you. Aquino laughed a little. She could consider my words as a sharp dagger in Rias's heart. I imagine no one had rejected her in such a way. Besides, why would I coach an idiot like you? It would be a waste of me to pay more attention to you than necessary, and teach you how team fighting works. Rias returned to her previous angry state, and seemed ready to attack me. Rias, stop. A magic circle appeared and the King of Rome appeared. Dressed in his usual battle robes, the Mao Lucifer made an appearance, and apparently he was not alone. If I remembered correctly, that brown-haired woman was the matriarch of Gremory, and the maid is Grafia. Rias, we have to talk. The matriarch, if I remembered correctly, was called Venezuelan. She looked at me and smiled. And I returned the gesture. I'll ask you to leave the room for a while. We have some things to discuss. Although Surzek is a super demon who almost always had a sour look on his face, His voice and his words didn't sound like an order. However, the icy stare of the maid I met a few days ago ended any attempt at a reply. My brothers along with the blonde with the sword left the place, and just when they left Venelana jumped on me. Issei-kun. Long time no see. Chapter 6. Mother, Rias shouted angrily as she looked at us. His mother, Venezuelan Bale of Gremory, expressed her affection through kisses and hugs. An undignified and questionable attitude given her position as matriarch of the House of Gremory. What do you think you're doing? Apparently this is the first time Rias has seen her mother in such a sweet way. It was strange if you asked me, since according to my knowledge, parents give this display of affection and love so that their children see it. Rias, don't talk to me with that tone of voice, I'm your mother. Although his words may have sounded harsh, the truth is that they lost a lot of credibility with the current situation. Honey, I haven't seen you in a long time, I miss you at night. Venelana was giving me a hand in front of her 2 children. If Rias's gaze could kill her, she would have done it 1,000 times over. Surzek, on the other hand, seemed very uncomfortable with us being so close. Mom! How can you act like that? What about my father? What's happening to him? Venelana didn't seem to really care about Rias's complaints. Her attention was more focused on putting my head between her 2 big daughters, who felt very comfortable, and I was getting sleepy. Rias, it seems you forgot that your father and I don't have such a romantic relationship. He has his own harem and I'm just his wife. But you and he are married. You both must respect the marriage. If it weren't for the fact that I felt so comfortable where I was, I would have given Rias some credit for remembering one of the most important traits of a marriage. But she seemed to forget that her race wasn't human and that she wasn't the one to say such words. You and I both know that political marriages rarely become sentimental. A clear example is your brother, who despite being the Satan of Lucifer is only married to one woman and has no one else to spend time with, unlike the education your father has given you over the years. Surzek felt imminent danger at being mentioned so lightly by his mother. He looked at his wife, who was giving him a subtly affectionate look but hiding something behind that facade that made him swallow saliva. Also, I really like this guy and I want him for myself. I don't see anything wrong with that. Venelana continued to claim her appreciation for me without giving her daughter the chance to continue the conversation. Rias, please. This visit has another itinerary we must follow. Surzek sighed as he tried to figure out why he decided to visit his sister on this very day. Leave the matter of mother's happiness for another time. We must address the situation of your marriage as such. Rias snorted in disgust. Just then Aquino appeared, carrying with her a complete set of tea. I must say that it appeared at a time when all this was becoming volatile. I could see the redhead visibly relax as her embarrassment and anger diminished. Surzek appreciated the change of atmosphere and took the tea from Aquino. The maid respectfully declined the drink, as did I. Venelana took one for her thirst or to quench her happiness. After a moment of silence, it was Surzek who started the conversation by looking directly at me. Thank you very much for not declining our meeting. Rias's gaze changed to a state of surprise and confusion that she didn't hide very well, and then she looked back at me. You didn't come to your invitation? Of course not. As I told you before, you have nothing that draws my attention exclusively to you. My time is more valuable than your person, Rias. What did you expect? She got angry and stopped seeing me and started ignoring me, as if I cared. I see that your relationship with my sister has not improved in the least. Yes. That was true. Unlike Rias, who barely noticed my existence a short time ago, I did know her quite well. It's not very easy to forget the fact that she has a reputation at the academy, and that my brothers have taken her home more than once. His disdain for things that didn't catch his attention resulted in my disdain for him for being such a shitty person. Well, in my humble opinion, she's only good for being a simple servant. No offense to Grafia, of course. Fine. I won't delve into that matter. Surzek looked straight at Rias. You won't get away from this one. Chapter 7. Climbing a hill with a lot of extra weight was a good cardio exercise. Of course, this exercise is only useful if you are an overweight person looking to lose weight in a few months. Sure. It was also a good warm-up exercise, but it didn't do much good. It was more a matter of attitude and perseverance to get the body used to carrying more weight than its own. Issei was not an excellent trainer. He didn't have many muscles like those that were frequently used in the gym, or some type of bodybuilding physique. I also didn't know the effectiveness of eating only nutritious meals and strange, disgusting tasting shakes. But he had the job of training Rias Gremory's group for a ranking battle, as if he had any chance, of course. The pay was good, and the best he could do in the short time he was given of days was to teach him some tricks. And although he expected more enthusiasm from Rias, her other slaves seemed to have high expectations for him. Well, he was recommended and paid by the Demon King himself, and was supposed to have some high standard or reputation for that. Venelana had a simpler plan that he personally approved of and hoped to implement, while playing with these children. Not even the beastly training of the one damn man, the celestial cultivation of the imperial dynasty, or the support of the Chamber of Time could increase the physical and magical prowess of these noodles in days. They must be delusional if they expected something like that. The best thing I had was to give some tips and make them work their butts off just so they believe they have a chance. Especially Rias. She was doomed even if she had a whole year to prepare. Although his bloodline exponentially increased his strength, he was fully aware that this same bloodline is in fact one of the weakest in the demonic realm. Don't get me wrong. Baal blood gave him the magic of destruction by birth, and Gremory gave him greater control over it thanks to his relaxed nature in contrast to the chaotic one of his counterpart. But the price was their vitality. The greater the power, the more fragile the wielder. One of the reasons why Sirzek Lucifer used a battle armor camouflaged as a tunic was for this very reason. His control of the power of the Baal clan was such that it earned him a place among the most powerful existences in this world. Rias probably doesn't even know this fact. It's safer to say she was good at some good attacks, but her timing was poor in comparison. For a normal devil, they wouldn't notice this fact. However, Sirzek was very aware of this weakness. One of the reasons why he expected progress in Rias's training was basically this. When we reached the top of the hill, everyone realized they were just starting and gave me dirty looks. Well, the only one who seemed pleased by the surprise was Aquino. She let out a rather strange laugh. Rias, on the other hand, seemed ready to give up. Very well, boys. All of you will have to cut the trunks of these trees and carry them on your backs to the other side of this mountain where your training place awaits us. Remember that if you refuse, you can turn around and hope that you survive the undoubted battle experience of your enemies who will massacre you like insects under a magnifying glass in the middle of a summer day. Their gazes hollowed out, and they followed the instructions. The hill led us to a steep slope that he had to climb using only his physical strength, no magic and no support. Rias, who, like the others, was wearing shorts that showed off her beautiful legs, and although she was also wearing a shirt over herself, it stuck to her body thanks to the sweat. By this point the demons were barely tired. They were carrying magically heavy backpacks that could be compared to a bus full of adults. It wasn't irrational, they were demons. Stronger than the average human by the standards of the newly reincarnated, and they were certainly stronger than wrestling champions, having already gained years of experience, and a body more suited to their strength. Rias was the first to take the lead and start climbing the slope, followed by her blonde knight, and then the queen with a huge smile on her face. The little girl was trying to force the boy from to get on, and he seemed to refuse to continue. I had no choice but to go and find out what was going on. What's happening? The cat looked at me for a moment, and then ignored me to continue with her business. Such disrespect would not go unpunished. I took the girl and sent her flying. That left me free to see this strange rag with a sack of rice on his head. What's happening? The boy trembled and responded nervously. I don't want to continue. It was understandable. I basically forced this Nini Hikikomori out of his room by threatening to burn his cute Genshin Impact and Puella Madoka outfits to ashes. I decided that if I continued like this, I'd be the first to die. So I had to think of an effective method for this guy. I knew someone who could stop me. I imagined sleeping all the time is becoming a routine for him, and a little rag dog mongrel would be an excellent distraction. Don't worry. You can skip this training. In exchange, I need you to get to our meeting point. Here. A lollipop. The child seemed to want to cry, but I sent him off with a sweet. It always works with children. Returning to Rias's training, this one seemed to be going well, so I decided to increase the difficulty. Since I already had the training place for these, it was easy to prepare things. Some oil in the form of barrels were what I dropped. Obviously, I did not warn. The barrels fell rapidly down the slope, surprising Rias, who to my surprise created a magic circle in front of her and released some of the power of destruction to eliminate it. Although she was able to avoid being hit, the oil still spilled on her, covering her from head to toe. Kiba, having his hands full, received the barrel full force and it exploded on him. Akino managed to do the same feat as Rias, and she apparently gladly covered herself in oil. Kaneko was the only one who dodged him. The oil was so black that it would be very difficult to remove. "Why did you do that?" Rias shouted angrily, and I ignored her. Instead, I took out a couple of firearms and started shooting in their direction. Although normal bullets did almost no damage to them, the matter was very different if these same bullets were bathed in seawater blessed with the presence of the rainbow, in which case they were much more effective than blessed silver bullets. Rias was the first to react to the danger and defended herself with the tree trunk, but the sudden movement caused her to slip and fall several meters. Don't expect mercy. And to accompany your training we will listen to a bit of Linkin Park as background music. What do you think? Chapter 8. The sunset in the high mountains looked really wonderful, especially when your location is above the clouds, making the reflection of the light look spectacular. I looked around and was really disappointed by Rias's enthusiasm and his pieces. This one seemed really tired physically and the other members were in a similar state. The only exception was the cute rag version of Dio Brando who looked at his companions with nervous joy. Very well, young demons, in view of your uselessness, I will dedicate a little of my time to explain what will become of you in the coming days. I really shouldn't give them any hope. They're doomed from the start, but I've already received my pay, and a little fun wouldn't hurt. Stupid brother, what kind of training do you know? My dearest sister, even in her workout clothes, she looks really hot. But I won't give her the pleasure of knowing it. Little sister, aren't you supposed to start running? She looked away pouting but then smiled. A beauty of my caliber is not made for big jobs. She could see a beautiful woman smiling behind her. None of the other people had noticed her presence. I see that you are something special. Rias was the first to react, leaving her position and retreating a good distance. I must admit she has a good instinct for danger. That must be the reason why even her family seems to have hope for her change. My sister was completely paralyzed. An icy touch on her shoulder was enough to have her submissive. It's a shame you lack some respect. The remaining entourage reacted at that moment only to see my sister being transported somewhere, and then disappear. Well, it's a shame, but his training shouldn't be a problem. I turned my attention to the others and set my gaze on them specifically. You, Red? You'll train with me. Taking out a maid outfit from who knows where, I threw it directly to Rias who, in surprise, barely managed to grab it. What do you expect me to do with this? Rias extended the outfit to see it better. Era, if I didn't know I'd say he wants you as his personal maid tonight. Akino with her usual smile spoke mockingly towards Rias. Rias, for her part, understood the subtle message and blushed immediately. I turned my attention to my dearest brother who was looking at me with suppressed fury. I think I know someone who would help in your situation. A huge and imposing figure landed on his sword, causing a small tremor. So you're the next drag carrier. I don't see anything impressive about you. His voice was so masculine that he seemed like an XXX actor. Thanks for coming, Tannen. What do you think of my brother? Trash. His response came immediately. He didn't even see me coming. If it were anyone else he would be dead by now. In fact, calling him trash is an honor he doesn't deserve. For now I'll call him a piece of shit human. He's nothing but waste. His tone made him sound unhappy with what he saw. You could do something with it. The huge dragon looked at me as if I had grown a second head. Even with the time you gave me, the only thing I could do is take it. Hell doesn't have enough volunteers these days. The dragon smiled happily and without saying a word picked up my brother and took him away immediately. That was it? His name is Tannen, Lord Blaze Meteor Dragon. A former Dragon King reduced to Lord by a stupid bet. He hates all those who are vain and lazy, so I thought my dear brother would be a good object to distress him. Oh, you're so bad. Akino was the only one who seemed to like my sense of humor, while the others looked at me with some hatred. I didn't care. I had a mission to accomplish, no matter what methods I had to use. Look straight into the eyes of the boy with a box for a head, said Brando. The boy reacted when he recognized the name. Without giving him time to realize what was happening, a tar-shaped shadow appeared under his feet, immediately grabbing him with many arms. So this is where my race ends. I'm not surprised. But if it's come to this, it means you're nothing more than scum, pretty boy. Many eyes appeared in the shadow, each of them staring at the boy who was shaking like jelly. The dozens of pairs of eyes stared at the boy, scanning his every form and seeming to come to a conclusion. I will accept this child. I will make sure to turn him into a man by the end of the week. The dozens of eyes turned their attention to me. When will you come to drink? I got a good-year-old wine from an acquaintance. Soon, the eyes closed and the rag began to be swallowed by the shadow. Wait, no. Let me go, let me go. Laugh. Laugh. She reacted to his call and prepared to attack. Guys, both Kiba and Kaneko, who had remained in the background, acted immediately and both began the attack. I just sighed and waited for them to be attended to. Kiba summoned a sword and shows Kaneko jumping up, ready to deliver a powerful blow with her fist. Rias, like Akino, seemed to be waiting for the right moment to start their attack, which would most likely be a bombardment of their skills. It was stupid. His actions were completely predictable, even for an amateur like me. Kiba took aim at what was imprisoning his partner, but instead of cutting it, what he did was bury himself in it. I could see the surprise on his face, and he didn't react quickly enough to avoid the blow that was directed at him from below, that sent him flying far away. Kaneko in her descent extended her fist ready to strike, but when she connected I could see the pain she felt. Her fist hit another fist, an arm extended from the shadow that collided with hers, and the result was her destroying her hand with part of her arm in the process. Kaneko fell to the ground due to the effect of inertia, only to receive a giant fist right on top of her that made her bury herself in the ground. Rias, who saw how her team was eliminated, attacked immediately, but to her surprise, her attack, the power of destruction, was consumed and disappeared once it made contact with the shadow. Akino, on the other hand, gave up on attacking once she saw that everyone else had failed. Lightning girl, you're pretty smart. Having said this, the shadow ended up swallowing the child and then disappearing. Wiping away the dust that had settled on me, I headed towards Rias, who glared at me. I, on the other hand, responded with a punch to her face and knocked her out. Akino looked at me strangely, but I ignored her and then headed towards Kiba, who could barely move. You, look for the cat and then come to me. The boy said nothing and obeyed the order. Now that I had gotten rid of the unwanted things, I would take the rest to a special place. I hope they are creative enough to survive more than minutes. Chapter 9. The sky darkened quickly. I'd heard that sunlight faded faster at higher altitudes. Apparently, someone had stated the obvious. For my part, the place I had obtained as a temporary base was quite comfortable in my opinion. The building seemed more like a vacation home and less like something that would serve for anything more than relaxation. In my short stay I had detected many types of spy spells, and although the degree of these could be considered as that of an expert in the art of harassment, I saw it as something completely unnecessary, so as the first task for these lazy people was to clean this entire building, including the spy spells. To my disappointment, the only one who seemed to be versed in their destruction was the queen, and that was only because she herself knew the spells in the first place. Kiba was completely helpless, and Rias excused herself with her clear lack of knowledge. If it weren't for the fact that I had no hope in her future situation, I could have forced her to learn at least something like a practical exercise. Fortunately for me, I didn't need to say anything, as she quickly offered to help finish the job. During the little training exercise, I dedicated myself to buying some things online that should arrive tomorrow around this time. Although I had been entrusted with the task of training Rias in order to give her a better chance of winning the Underworld Games classification, and thus annulling her marriage with approximately days, or rather if we don't count this very day, I knew that nothing I did would be enough. If I were months old, I could at least do something. Although supernatural beings had a genetic advantage over humans in terms of physical growth, the truth is that by the standards of the supernatural world they are barely anything. The nature of the devil prevents him from trying to surpass himself and become stronger. In that sense they were a bit like dragons. A little bit of strength was enough to gain strength, since it came naturally to them. Rias is no exception to this rule. Her life has been filled with idle and unexhausting chronicles due to this genetic trait, and it is also the main reason why most other factions don't pay much attention to the devils. The only way he could help Rias and satisfy his customers was by training his brain. But seeing Rias clean the furniture with a simple smile as if it were something vile and banal irritated him. That smile was an insult to all the workers who make a living cleaning. The only way he could think of to achieve this goal was to take her somewhere special. He thought that days should be enough to guarantee a real change in her attitude. Who knows? Unless she can survive the first minutes, of course, if she doesn't die stupidly. While Rias and the others were in charge of their mission, I made sure to get what I need at the moment. I rarely get to actively participate in a real battle, and if possible I wish to avoid it. But the only ones who could really help me in this situation were with the participation of a chapter of Ultramarines and some pretty funny green-skinned guys. Change of scene. Rias was really upset. It had been days since she started her blessed training in charge of the younger brother of the Hayadu, and the orders of her mother. Not even her brother could really help her other than giving them a place to train, on some forgotten mountain in the human world somewhere in Mongolia. 4 days they have been doing strange things, and she still doesn't know where her other pieces went, and that worried her a lot. Her first day was to climb the mountain where she was at a disadvantage and without the possibility of using magic. It is worth mentioning that she ended up completely dirty, and was tired from the exercise. If that wasn't enough, she now had to wear a maid outfit that, although she wouldn't admit it, looked cute. After that he started cleaning the whole complex where he would stay until almost dawn. I had to admit I was expecting something heavier, not this. And yet it wasn't easy at all. He cursed his older brother not only for choosing a damned big and luxurious building with too many ostentatious decorations, but also because every time he found a spy spell he would break the ornament in response to his anger and displeasure. Thanks to that he had been left without breakfast as punishment. After that I had to read a series of completely ridiculous fantasy and battle tactics books. How the hell is a reincarnated man with all his strength at the limit from the start shy around women? It's completely ridiculous. Although not everything was bad, the stories had given him a lot of information and strategies that he had not thought of at first, and that he could use with Riser once he faced him. Although I saw the Hayadu boy walking around the house as if nothing that happened around him affected him, I had to admit that he was not an idiot, and perhaps I had misjudged him when I heard about him. The next day was different. According to Hayadu-san, we were supposed to take the day off and go out and have fun, and somehow, we ended up at Disneyland. Although training was important, a little relaxation never hurts, so we all headed out to have fun, except for Kiba. He preferred to find a comfortable place to train. The day would have been perfect if it weren't for the fact that in front of me, in a love hotel room, I had Hayadu-san wearing a revealing outfit telling us that I had to have Hex with him since it was part of the training, and to top it all off, Akino was willing to enthusiastically participate in a threesome between us. My dignity as heir to the pillar had been trampled before, but never in this way. I was already ready to delete him when I saw that his intentions were not a joke, but he told me this: either we have Hex until dawn, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Chapter 10. I must admit that the idea was very tempting. A few days before, I want you to have Hex with my daughter. At that moment, I was having breakfast at the most exclusive place in all of Tokyo. The top of the Tokyo Tower, and in response to how crazy that sounded, I spit out everything I had in my mouth. I could only pray that it wouldn't fall on some unfortunate tourist. Wait, are you serious? Or is it because you, the demon, have some weird fantasy about you and your daughter? Venelana laughed in response to my strange question, and I couldn't stop my heart from beating in response. No, dear. Rias is my daughter, and no, I'm sorry, but I don't have such fantasies. I could consider it if they were other races, but leaving this topic aside, my reason is another. Venelana now changed her expression to a sadder one. I was baffled by the way her mood changed so quickly, but I could understand why. I'm worried you'd be. She hugged herself and continued. You see, Rias is special. Ever since I held her in my hands all those years ago, I knew she was special. I hoped that keeping her out of the political panorama would make her more independent and less stubborn than the average teenage demon. His gaze turned to the distance. I believed that if I kept her whims and educated her with the moral values of society, I could let her be something more than a simple reproductive woman. I believed that if I kept her safe, she would be better. Venelana shed a couple of tears. I could understand her. I was once a father, and I know how difficult it is to protect your children from any illness. I literally hunted witches because they ate children. Also, it's very hard to avoid them becoming the bad guys in the story. Like the tragic ending villains in an Otome game. Wait. I got up from my place and hugged Venezuelan, who seemed to be about to shed a downpour. My daughter, she doesn't know everything we have to sacrifice for her sake. She doesn't know all the problems we've had to endure because of her stupidity. I know it's our fault, but even so, she hesitated. I just want her to be happy. I don't want her to lose her treasure to just anyone, much less not out of love. If that's the case, I'd rather it be with someone I truly value as part of the family. She looked at me and I could only nod in response to her request. I could only feel bad for Riser. He wasn't a bad guy, but it wasn't the time to defend him. Somewhere in space, there was something fantastic every time I saw the lights illuminating the stars. Clearly this was very different, as each of those lights around us were battleships of the Orc race. How they worked, I'm not sure. It was better not to ask and just assume they moved, and that was it. Orcs are a peculiar race, large in numbers and clearly green. Luckily these orcs are understanding. If you say you are a green orc, they will not question it. That is how I came to the orc fleet under the command of the great ORC chief of many. The meeting was simple. I didn't see him, and he accepted that I was a green skin. I gave him the greatest treasure I had in my possession, Napoleon Bonaparte's hat, conqueror of France and dictator of Germany. Clearly such a description was not real, but it sounded impressive, and the orcs were in complete agreement on that, so we boarded the Maz cruiser for our next part of the training. By the way, Kiba was in a recovery chamber because he didn't want to give his sword to an orc and ended up with all his bones broken. Akino, for her part, looked at me with heart-shaped eyes, and Rias threw murderous glances at me. It was normal. I couldn't catch her because Akino was quite insatiable and Rias refused to be part of the orgy, so it's her loss. She'll understand that where she goes there will only be pain and agony. By the way, I had warned you to watch out for the purple ones. You never know where they might be. I always looked at a corner of the room whenever we met just to be sure. We were heading to a binary solar system since they had detected that it would be a good place for a big wag. It was very probable that some kind of being from the cosmos would be available. I would expect it to just be some demons or maybe the Imperium of Man. However, I wouldn't have any problem if it were the Eldars. However, I definitely don't want to see a Tyranid again. Even some heretics are more acceptable. In the distance I saw hundreds of ships disappear immediately, surrounded by a dark stain with many teeth and tentacles. Shit! Chapter 11. The plan was simple. A few days somewhere in space, fighting something aberrant and destructive, killing until your bones can't take it anymore. But now, I'm seriously considering whether I should end the plan that went overboard from the beginning. We were currently on a wandering planet along with as many green-skinned hordes as possible. The rest were still fighting in space, giving the best warg they could wish for. However, in my current situation I see that the possibilities were very minuscule. In the distance I saw a mass of Tyranid beasts being slaughtered while on the other side they were overcoming the orcs. I paid no attention to the battleship behind us. Orcs were pouring out in droves with all sorts of weapons, and some chained creatures that appeared to be their pets. Next to me was Kiba. I could see his legs shaking like spaghetti, but I had to admit that his determination to stand up straight and with his head held high was several points in his favor, even more so with his chivalrous attitude. Akino looked visibly scared, but she was still completely excited. Rias, she didn't know how to describe his attitude. He seemed very indifferent to what was coming. He seemed very, very confident. Any particular option? My gaze turned to Kiba and he immediately noticed my attention. I will fight until the end. A smile grew on my face. You are very similar to Queen Arthur. I saw how his body tensed at my comment. However, he knew very well how to hide his attitude. Akino seemed undecided about her feelings. In situations like this, one could easily fall into madness if one didn't have the proper support. I took her in my arms and hugged her to ease her feelings. She calmed down and I looked at Rias, who seemed bored with everything. She didn't even answer my question. Good. I'll explain everything you need to know. As I looked ahead I could see the orcs fighting with joy. Something Akino could sympathize with because of their sadistic attitude towards harming others. However, Kiba could have a big change of attitude with this demonstration of pure power and stupidity, on our part of course. Tyranids are ultimate beasts. No life form can escape them. It is only a matter of time before they can fall to their swarm forces. Rias gave a short laugh at my explanation. She must have thought her power was enough to wipe them out. She'll be surprised when she realizes this particular attack group is the type that increases its strength over time. I recommend you fight like there's no tomorrow. Attack with everything from the beginning, and every time you feel tired come to me. Don't think you can fight alone. If you see a group of orcs fighting, join them, but don't get attached or be considerate. This type of situations leads them to a kind of excitable orgasms, and they could easily kill friends as if they were enemies. A huge Orcish battleship fell in the east, causing earthquakes in the aftermath. That's the sign. Taking her out of his arms, Akino immediately felt discouraged, but seeing the brunette's smiling expression, her spirits lit up again. Remember what I told you. Attack with everything from the beginning. Everyone nodded in response. Change of scene. The swarm of mounts was consuming the Orcish battle forces, the great chieftain of many still leading the charge to the front, firing giant weapons as he pushed his companions forward. His euphoric emotion only grew when he saw a huge explosion that embraced his enemy with red fire that devoured everyone. With great excitement he destroyed his great bolsters and quickly looked for a better weapon, finding it in the hands of a group of crying goblins. With renewed strength he ran towards it in an epic charge that pushed aside everyone in his path, and took it immediately even after snatching it from the hands of the goblins. He liked the large size. With a saw with many teeth and a large goblin-shaped head attached to the muzzle of the gun, he felt that this was the gun he had been looking for all his life, and with a huge battle cry he began to fire what he believed to be the best fire of all. Warg! The flares of the power of destruction were nothing in comparison. Not only did it destroy the sky in its battle cry, but it also destroyed the flying swarm in its path. Rias, for her part, who felt that the challenge given was nothing, felt clearly offended when someone had made an attack much greater than hers. Even though he looked for the culprit, he only saw a large gun with several goblins tied to it. No one was holding the gun, yet it was pointing it at everything in its path. Rias wasn't aware of the strange classification of orcs in the vast cosmos. The great chieftain of many was a purple orc, therefore. No one could see him, and only his subordinates were able to hear him. His battle cry rallied the forces of his companions, who took everything they had at their disposal to begin attacking the swarm fleet. Issei heard their battle cry. In response, the orcs, who had previously been fighting with unbridled excitement, began to act in a more organized manner, attacking specific groups and directing their strongest fighters to the largest targets. I could also see other orcs starting to build something with all the junk that was around, and in a short time it took shape of a curiously shaped battleship. Even the Tyranids were changing their strategy and becoming more organized. The monsters would become stronger, and the fights would be bigger. I could see Akino shooting lightning everywhere, opting for a more greenskin-style strategy, and harvesting large quantities of beasts with her power of destruction. The only one who seemed more tired was Kiba, who threw perfect cuts that split the mounts, throwing their visors and juices everywhere. I knew a swarm boss would appear soon, as this one seemed to be the one causing the most destruction to the swarm fleet.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.